earthquake when we come back. Michael, let's talk a little bit for just a moment. The metal samples that were given to Billy Meier by the ETs, passed on, were they not, to somebody to test them?
Yes, actually, for those people that have any knowledge of the Meier case in terms of like scouring through the books and stuff, what they usually come across is that these samples were given to a scientist named Marcel Vogel. And I'll get to that in a second, but I also wanted to let people know that there were at least two other scientists who did look at these samples. They weren't only held by Vogel. And there was analysis done by one Swiss lab, I think, and by another scientist. Marcel Vogel was a scientist, a chemist with IBM, and he was the holder or co-holder of about 32 patents. I think he was the man who invented the magnetic coating on floppy disks or something like this. I have it all on the website. It sometimes gets hard to remember all the details, but I know that I have them on the website and people can find it fairly easily. He was given these samples after Meier had given them to Wendell Stevens and the investigators who turned them over to him. He did a video recording of his analysis, and he was able to determine that they had a very interesting composition. They had virtually, he said, all of the elements in the periodic table were in these pieces of metal, but they were not, just for want of a better term, smushed together. They had discrete presence and relationship to each other. That fascinated him, as did the fact that he had found in a spectral analysis, he had found thulium and other elements in there. And at the time, he was referring especially to thulium as being a fairly rare and expensive earth element for a Swiss farmer to come upon somehow fashion in these metal samples. But even more, or at least as interesting, was that when he subjected the samples to very high electron scanning microscopic enhancement, he was finding micro-machining and evidence of what he called plowing and perhaps laser cutting, and the structures of the metals were revealing that there was also crystal structure within the metallic structure. And as a scientist, he was not only fascinated by this, he said that with any technology available to him, he could not put this together. And he had shown it to some other people himself as well. Now, the problem for skeptics, and it's a legitimate concern, in terms of, gee, why don't we have those in our hands? The ones that Marcel Vogel had, he had locked up in a safe, and then when he went to the safe the next day, they weren't there anymore. But he had done the analysis and videotaped and shown them. So, of course, this, served to stir the controversy, which is very much the purpose of the Meier case anyhow, to get people to think and to struggle through it and to be a bit combative with each other at times, even to try to get to the truth of the matter. So the metal samples are a very interesting part of this, and they were real enough to a world-class scientist that he was able to do an analysis and videotape his analysis and publish his findings.
All right, now let's get into some of these other controversial areas here. Planet X.
Right.
What's going on in that arena, Michael?
Well, according to the information in the case, and I have an article there where they talk about some of the objects that are out beyond Pluto. They talk about two belts that contain, I think, literally billions of various sized objects, and that what we're thinking is Planet X or Nibiru, that we're off, that this is not coming to us soon or otherwise. There is a Nibiru, which is in effect a kind of a comet. It never has supported life. They claim that it's got a 3,600-year, I think it is 3,600-year
orbit, yeah.
Orbit, and that indeed, we'll see this again, but there were never Anunnaki living on it, and they didn't come to Earth. Indeed, there were extraterrestrials who were involved with the Sumerians, and that's, according to them, accurate. And they claim, I think, that these were from the Sirian star system, but that the whole mythology around 2012 and Nibiru and all is especially Planet X, Nibiru, is a misdirection. There are threats from bodies in space that are coming our way, and they're quite specific about, for instance, about the red meteor. And I had read that in 1986. I think he first published information on that in 81. And that's not Planet X. That's something that our scientists now acknowledge is coming our way. And there's two different dates. I think it's like 2029 and 2036.
That's Apophis, right?
Yes. That's right. And what the Plejaren has said to Meier is, this is the one to watch out for. because this one, if it doesn't hit
right.
you,
Yeah.
if it doesn't hit you in 2029, is a real big chance that it will hit, and it will hit in the region between, I think, the North Sea and the Black Sea. It will split the crust of the Earth. It'll sink lands. I mean, they describe it in real detail what will happen if we do not deflect it. And they were long ago said to Meyer, your scientists, need to. The best way to do this would be to detonate nuclear explosion far enough from it so you don't destroy it, because then you'd have a rain of incendiary meteorites hitting your planet. But to deflect it off course, and that they are not allowed to do that. They're giving the information. They say, look, there are certain things that your scientists know, and we may have told you about this before they did, but, like I think last time we spoke, I mentioned, I think it was last time, that there is the prediction of a 9.0 earthquake off the Oregon coast. And shortly after, when I did some searching online, scientists are now talking about, we could have a 9.0 up here. Well, they're saying, no, you're not could have, there will be one, and it will go for 5 straight minutes.
Which is huge. But let me ask you one quick question, Michael.
Sure,
we'll get back. When you just said they can't get involved, let's say in deflecting this asteroid, why not? I mean, why not get involved on some kind of a mission like that? We're not getting involved here in, the humanitarian aspects of a planet. They're not getting involved in stopping the wars. They're letting us try to work out. But this thing is something that's coming from their neck of the woods, basically.
Well, maybe not directly. I mean, it's it came from outer space, but it may not be exactly from where they come from. But I get your point. My understanding is this: that in their calculations, and as human beings of Earth, I know emotionally we will think this is just unconscionable, silly, whatever. They figure that for them to do something, especially when we know about an event, and for them to intercede, will only actually perpetuate a lack of responsibility for us, knowing how we have willingly given away our responsibility, in their opinion, as well, for several millennium to various religions and leaders and all, that this would cripple us. Yes, we might be able to save X number of people, but if we are warned, since we have all this technology, we have the technology to actually prevent this from happening. In other words, we have the ability to say, hey, we'll handle it, thank you very much. Don't we want to be equals with other beings who may exist and may find their way here, or do we want to be always looking in veneration and adoration and fear and staying children cosmically? No. This is the kind of thing where you learn how to take care of yourself.
Yes, but if I had a child that was ready to put his or her hand into a flame on the stove, you could, 1, let them do that to learn their lesson, or 2, move their hand away and try to convince them that you don't do this.
Yes,
which may or may not work, because they may go back and do it again.
Right.
I would be the type of person to move their hand out of the way,
sure,
rather than for them to get hurt.
Well, the difference in the analogy would be this, because, I mean, as a father myself, I went through that. You tell a child, and then a child, though, doesn't, when they are first moving into these danger zones, they're ambulatory, whatever, they're moving around, and now it's going to be the stove, or it's going to be a heater, or it's going to be glass, or whatever.
They don't know that those things can harm them.
That's right. And so the difference is we do know. We are adults, and they want to deal with us not as, quote unquote, their children, because we're not their children. They want to deal with us as adults and give us enough respect. It's tough love. You could look at it that way, and that's something we use on this planet. When you do have kids who are of reasoning age and who have, keep on, blowing it and making mistakes, and they've been warned, and okay, so you say, okay, look, you're restricted from this. I mean, this is where you're using restrictive tough love. They're not trying to restrict us. They're trying to encourage us to take responsibility and prioritize our survival, not our indulgence in video games and sports events and endless television, but prioritize our survival and our evolution. It's painful. There are things in the contact notes where they talk about they're observing certain things, like the first Gulf War, where they watched some brutalization